Hello and welcome to Political Theatre, Deccan Herald's special coverage of the counting day. I'm Ahmed Shariff, and over the next half an hour, we'll have a look at the action unfolding in Assam and West Bengal. Now, to discuss about this, joining me are my colleagues Sumir Karmakar from Assam and Shromo Das from West Bengal. We also have the Deputy Editor of Deccan Herald, Mr. BS Arun, and a special guest, we have Mr. Sanjay Jha, who's the author of the book The Great Unraveling India After 2014, and he's also the former spokesperson of the Congress. Welcome everybody to the discussion. My first question would be to Mr. Jha, saying that, now we see that, it's already past 12 and the TMC closely inching towards the 200 mark, according to the ECI data in West Bengal, and in Assam, the BJP is somewhere around 60 seats. How do you make of this situation there?
Well, I think first and foremost, Ahmed, the good news is that Prashant Kishore will continue to be active in the political space. I think we would have lost an intelligent, intellectual mind had the BJP crossed the 100. I have always believed that the TMC would be difficult to dislodge. There are various reasons, we can debate it a little later, but the fact remains that, a lot of people underestimated what I believe is the true Bengali identity. And that really pushes back against a very polarized, BJP campaign, extremely poisonous and vicious. And while Mamata is to a great extent responsible because of polarized politics also suits her TMC narrative in basically cannibalizing the Congress and the left, and it clearly has paid dividends for her. The fact of the matter is that I think the trends indicate that there's been a huge minority consolidation behind the TMC. And the attempt by the left and the Congress to be relevant in Assam by weakening TMC through the Indian secular force or, appealing to the minority votes has clearly boomeranged. I mean, the minority is seeing a very dangerous, situation emerging in West Bengal, decided to go with Mamata. For one reason, yes, she has definitely been pretty vocal in backing them. Now, on the other hand, the minorities always vote where they believe they are going to be safe and secure under a stable government. So I think personally, I'm very happy for the West Bengal result. That would have been a very, alarming situation had the BJP won. I think for the Congress, Assam would be a monumental disappointment because I had said so, and I will repeat it again. The Assam verdict, the Congress should have treated it like a national verdict on the CAA and the NRC, which I believe are extremely dubious. It's a very, a sleight of hand attempt to polarize this country and to give the majoritarian Hindutva politics a push. And the Congress should have treated Assam like an existential issue. I do think they've fought a spirited campaign. I'm not here to criticize the Congress just for the heck of it. I think there was a spirited, kind of attempt to try and reclaim the space that was lost 5 years ago. But, and I think even the alliance looked good. If you look at the alliance numbers, that they should have been around 48% of the vote share. So clearly, the narrative hasn't worked. Although we'll have to see how the vote shares play out and are the losses very marginal in terms of number of votes. But I would say for the Congress and for Priyanka as well, because she put her neck out in Assam much more than the other leaders, the result in Assam will be a huge disappointment. For politically, I think the BJP gets a massive tailwind to tell the people of India that Assam is where the protest began on CA and NRC, seems to have endorsed that politics. How is it good for the state or the country in the future? That time will tell. But the BJP's ability to do these developmental schemes and then to take them to the last mile and tell people that I'm the one who brought you that benefit, whether it's for the tea plantation workers, whether they talked about the minimum wage and so on. I think these things begin to work for the BJP. And I do believe for the Congress, a lot of food for thought once the results are out today.
Yeah, Sanjay Ji, if one party, as you are mentioning, if one party has lost so much in this election, as we see the results coming in, the Congress, especially in Kerala as well as in Assam, as you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So what future holds for Congress with this kind of results? It's not that it's totally unexpected, but what kind of future for Congress do you see?
Well, Arunji, frankly, in my opinion, the Congress is now as much of a threat to Indian democracy as the BJP. Because the only party at a national level that can stop the BJP technically, because we have the organizational reach, we have governed in many of these states, we have a lot of good regional leaders. But the fact that the central leadership is not able to inspire the confidence in the common man of India makes the Congress an equal co-conspirator in the destruction of Indian democracy. Because the truth be said, I mean, today, if you look at us in Kerala, now Kerala has always been a swing state. I mean, for the first time, you have an LDF bucking the trend. And this is not a close election. If you look at the results in terms of number of seats, because in a first past the post system, the LDF can claim that it has decimated the UDF and held on and not allowed anti-incumbency to kind of come in. And Arunji, look at what happened in the Lok Sabha, where the Congress or the UDF won 19 of the 20 seats.
Yes.
So clearly there is a vacuum in the Congress. And, I'm sure at some point you all will debate it today. In West Bengal, we have completely obliterated ourselves. This is something, I'm sure media will look at. Last elections, the Congress was the single largest opposition party with 13% votes. And together with LDF, we had 34% of the votes. Where have they gone? The Congress today probably won't even be in single digits. It may be a zero. So we are talking about a complete self-annihilation, which is dangerous for democracy. You see, Congress can't wake up 3 months before an election and campaign. You got to be working at it all the time. And even in Tamil Nadu, I can see from the trends that the Congress may be actually weakening that coalition, although I'll have to see how many of the 25 seats have gone to the Congress so far, or at least the leads are there. And Puducherry may be a small state, but it has great value in terms of optics. You hold on to another state. And remember, for the BJP, the Puducherry is a baby step towards pushing its agenda in Tamil Nadu. So I do believe somewhere down the line, this is an extremely disappointing day for the Congress, which is frankly the cliche of our times.
Yes, Sanjay Ji. What kind of impact this result may have on the Congress and its leadership especially?
Well, I do feel, and I have said so even before this election, that the Congress's problem is not, one individual. Everybody keeps talking about Rahul Gandhi, and because, he's been the leader, or the Gandhis have basically governed Congress for a long time. The Congress needs an organizational renewal. It has talent. It doesn't know how to use it. It is drifting on ideology. It has become a tactical party. It is not a party that's strategic and thinking long term. You can't say that we'll survive election to election. So supposing if the Congress had done well in Assam and Kerala, Rahul Gandhi would have been anointed the Congress president tomorrow. But I still feel that is not the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem is, what does the leader do with the assets he has, right? So you need to kind of reorganize yourself. You need to kind of get the cadres up. You need a strategy in terms of alliances. You need to understand at the ground level, how am I preparing for next year's elections in Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand? But think 2024. How are we going to handle this current COVID pandemic, which is going completely berserk, to try and actually fight for the people of India instead of just tweeting against Modi and the BJP? So, this whole absence of a collective power being leveraged is the biggest weakness. But to answer your short question, I expect a direct impact that I don't think Rahul Gandhi would like to be the head of the Congress at this point of time. And I do feel the Congress needs a new non-Gandhi leadership.
What would be the strategy of G23 in the next couple of days, going by this result?
Well, I'm a more moderate voice of the G23. There are more belligerent political heavyweights who have been more expressive and articulate than I have been. But I do want to make this point. There will be a call for a change in the Congress leadership. Because, let's be honest, Arunji, all of you are veterans in media and have the highest respects for you. No, we are no longer talking about an existential crisis for India as just a political, kind of lexicon. It's a reality. the grand old party is down on its knees. And we are at the moment, sadly enough, collapsing under the weight of our own inadequacies. And the only way to revive yourself is first to accept the fact that you are in a deep terminal decline. And because the Congress has been blind to that reality, it is affecting, I think, millions of galvanized, motivated workers who come in every day to work with some hope, but they find that Lutyens Delhi is in a Rip Van Winkle sleep mode. So yeah, I do believe G23 will step it up. And it's got big people there. Mr. Huda is a very powerful personality in Haryana. Sachin Pilot is emerged as a titan in Rajasthan. Forget the last abortive attempt to form the government.
Yeah.
But you will realize that the Congress leadership at the state levels will now begin to express themselves more, I would think, in a more belligerent fashion.
Yeah. Soumya, you have anything from the ground for Sanjay?
Here also, if we take Congress into consideration, I mean, the left and Congress is facing near obliteration. I mean, for Congress, which has ruled the state for several years, now I don't think, I mean, even in their district, bastion in Murshidabad district, where which is known as Congress leader Adil Chaudhry's district, even there also they are not leading in any seats. And forget Murshidabad, they are not even leading in any seats in Bengal. The left Congress combo at present they are leading in one seat, 1 to 2 at best. No, 0. No, it has come to 0.
Right.
So all this, and one thing, what the mistake that the left and Congress has done, especially the CPIM and Congress, these two parties have fought with each other in a bloody and bitter manner for several decades. I mean, CPIM's dominance in West Bengal started from the 1977 assembly elections. It has started by dislodging Congress, and both parties have, allegedly beaten up, killed several of its cadres. Casualties have been on both sides. Now, when these two decided to hold hands in the 2016 assembly elections in a rather hodgepodge manner, so their own cadres, deviated from them. Either now, if you see the 2016 and the 2019 elections, their own cadres and the large considerable number of Congress and CPIM cadres, they have either voted for TMC or voted for BJP.
Soumya, briefly,
please. So at currently, it seems that Mamata's strategy has worked, and BJP's strategy has not provided results as good as it's expected.
Yeah. Sumir, you have anything for Sanjay Ji?
I think, sir, what Congress initially talked more about their alliance with the AUDF, Mr. Azmal's party. They said, their alliance with the AUDF will consolidate the Muslim votes against the BJP, particularly on the issue of the CAA. But I think that seems to have not worked because the AUDF seats is also going down. So my question to Mr. Jha is, do you think that was a mistake for Congress to join hands with AUDF?
Well, I think, you already know it, Sumit, that Tarun Gogoi, when he was the chief minister, was against any alliance with with Ajmal Ji's party, the AIUDF. The fact remains, however, that I do believe that since 2014, the situation, I think, changed very dramatically. The BJP, actually, if you look at its flip-flop in the NRC, for example, it showed how weak it seemed in terms of handling its political ramifications. Also, the fact that if you look at the BJP, they talked about the CAA in West Bengal, but they did not really talk about it in Assam. So it was an opportunity really for this alliance, because I do believe if you look at the AIUDF, it had 13% vote share and 13 seats in the last assembly. And together, along with the Congress, which had the largest vote share at 31%. So the Congress in the last elections had the highest vote share, even higher than the BJP. So the question arises that arithmetically, along with the Bodo party that joined, they were at around 48%. The BPF, I think, they were around 48%. So you are talking about a potentially very formidable alliance. Therefore, I think when we look at it, in nitty-gritty, what we will probably discover that it all boils down to the ability of the BJP to connect to the last mile. I know that the Congress went up and put out a more, a higher minimum wage for the tea plantation workers. Let's take that as an example. But the BJP had done something for them as well, right? You can't ignore it. And I think that what the BJP always does much better than the Congress is that it talks about whatever small incremental changes it does, it actually begins to amplify that messaging down to the common person. And I think if the Congress has not been able to tell the people in this Assam election about the fact that the BJP's game is eventually to use the religion in a state where its ethnicity, where its linguistic issues are equally important. If religion becomes the dominant factor, and it seems to be, and it is stunning because a lot of the local Assamese people were extremely upset with the BJP. It's not that they were blindly supporting the BJP at all. They were worried about their own identity being consumed by the influx of the Hindu refugees from Bangladesh. So I think you are seeing an extremely polarized environment. And I think there's one arithmetic that never goes wrong, that whenever the BJP is able to successfully separate the voter on the basis of a more visceral, religious issue, they are normally getting an electoral windfall. And I think that same thing seems to have played out in Assam. And the Congress did not have a chief ministerial candidate. There was no clarity on that either. Congress as in the alliance, these things do send out a message that you don't know what kind of a hodgepodge it is. And remember when the BJP campaigned, it kept talking about Mr. Ajmal's party being an anti-national, disruptive, it was really in the face, brazen expression that these are Muslims with the Congress and all of you should therefore oppose them and vote for the BJP.
Yeah, Sanjay Jha, I have a question. Yeah. We are seeing two scenarios here. One, Assam, where the BJP has sort of, although it didn't highlight the CAA, it now can think that, because of CAA, it has won Assam again. On the other side, you have West Bengal, where, in future, what it should do with the NRC. In the light of these two states, giving different or varied results for CAA, NRC, what do you think BJP will do as far as these two issues are concerned?
See, for the BJP, if you look at it, they're still a winner as far as I'm concerned in West Bengal. Please remember that this party was virtually irrelevant in the last election. And it is now not just the second largest party, even if it gets 90, 85, even if it gets 75 seats, it's a triumph for the party. Now, a lot of us, will say, well, despite Mr. Modi, Mr. Shah, Muscle, ED, IT, Election Commission, they could not win. True. But that credit goes to Mamata Banerjee, right? See, because the only way to stop the BJP is if you have a political party that actually responds to them in their language. I thought the way Mamata converted the whole sympathy factor and drew the entire election as a referendum on her commitment for the people of Bengal was brilliant. I mean, was always brilliant. I always thought she was a front runner, although I have been in shows where people have said that the BJP will probably topple her. So I do believe that the Mamata Banerjee will now probably, in my opinion, try and reduce the BJP from the 170 in the next Lok Sabha election. You see, the BJP is now done with this. Their next goalpost will be 2024. And they will say, hang on, in 2024, if I'm going to lose some seats in Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, or any other Rajasthan or the central India, then I need to really buffer up in West Bengal. So for the BJP, it is 1 inch closer to dominating in Lok Sabha. Once they do Lok Sabha, they inch for the assembly. So Mamata will have to handle this with care, because when it comes to Lok Sabha, Narendra Modi always has an edge over a regional leader, as we have seen even in the last Lok Sabha election. So she needs to handle this carefully and try and woo back those sections that have frankly moved towards the BJP instead of moving to her from the left Congress combined. And I think therefore you'll see her handling this in a more diplomatic fashion. She will obviously be now the voice of the minorities. She can't afford to now not try and let that position be dissipated. That she will also ensure that the criticism from the BJP that she has now become only a Muslim vote representative stands smashed. She can go and tell BJP, Bengal has rejected you, and a Bengal with both Muslims and Hindus have said goodbye to you at the state level. But that doesn't mean her job is done. So I do see her working a lot with the old Congress left bastions that have been wobbly all the way through. They have gone to her, but she needs to retain them and pull back the votes that have moved to the BJP.
Yeah, that would be my next question. Now, Mamata having emerged as a leader in her own, with her own efforts, with this win especially, and this might pitchfork her to the national opposition leadership role. You think so? And will it pitchfork her to oppose Modi in 2024?
I will, Arunji, asking me a very valid question. I'm not going to beat about the bush. If Narendra Modi and the BJP have to be defeated in 2024, you need now not just the Congress, you need the Sharad Pawars and the Mamata Banerjees of the world to become center stage of UPA politics. See, let's be honest. I mean, this was literally a litmus test for Mamata Banerjee. Many people said if she loses or the TMC loses, BJP is literally closing the gates for 2024. She stopped it. And she's done it virtually single-handedly. I'm aware of the fact that the Congress was actually trying to, kind of reduce her in TMC by attacking her when she got injured and by generally hoping that by weakening TMC, the Congress and the left will find its political relevance, which is all right. I mean, as a political strategy, the Congress had no other option. But the fact is, I think the Congress should have always realized that its principal enemy is not, or I would use the enemy, opponent, is really not Mamata. It is really Narendra Modi at the central level. And therefore, I would have probably made accommodation with Mamata, settled for being a small fry player like we are in Tamil Nadu, but ganged up to stop the BJP at the center. So just imagine if today the Congress had gone with Mamata, and even if it had won 8 seats, for example, or 5, it would have been a player in the government, right? You could have said, hey, we are part of the winning combination. And together you had a legitimate call to take on Mr. Modi with Mamata there in the forefront. But I do believe Mamata Banerjee now becomes a potential candidate at the national level. And I'll put my neck out. I mean, after this victory, why can't she be deemed as a potential prime ministerial candidate either? Yeah, she can have a wonderful cabinet. It doesn't have to be the cabinet that she has in West Bengal. She'll have a talent to choose from the rest of the country, from all the parties. And if Mr. Modi gets a fighter, somebody who enters the street and answers word for word and challenges you, I do believe Mamata Banerjee has the potential to do it.
Yeah, that's an important point. I think we are going to see lots of Mamata in future in the next couple of years. And, that might be another interesting point where what is the relationship that Congress would have with Mamata in West Bengal as well as nationally?
Arunji, I have been a big vocal advocate of the fact that the Congress now needs to reassemble all those people who left you. This is not the time to sit on an ego that I have to have a Gandhi as the president. It's not working for you. This is literally the Congress self-destructing. So the way to do that would be to bring everybody together in the UPA. I don't think these parties are going to merge with you unless, you kind of, create something radical and a complete outlier development. Personally, I would push for even that. I mean, today, what is Mamata after all, right? Mamata is Congress. It means the people of West Bengal are actually having faith in Mamata's Congress politics that she's playing. I mean, her ideology is no different from the Congress, right? So I do believe that the Congress needs to recognize that there is a footprint you have in Andhra in Jagan Mohan Reddy. There's a footprint you have with Sharad Pawar in NCP in Maharashtra. And you have something in West Bengal. We lost them because of the way we handled Mamata. Everybody knows what happened, when Pranab Da was was handling West Bengal. So I do believe the time has come for the realignment. But the first thing is that Congress has to get off the high horse and say, we have messed up. We need to get the old group together and give them an equal voice in driving the UPA politics. And it has to be, in my opinion, a non-Gandhi political face for the UPA could become the alternative in the next campaign.
Ahmed, do you have any questions to Sanjay Ji as far as the coronavirus is concerned?
Yes, sir. So before I just give out the question, I just want to highlight certain figures, sir. Like, West Bengal, this one state went into polls in 8 phases, and that took about like a month. And if you see the the coronavirus cases, the COVID-19 cases, when the first phase began on March 27th, it was just 800 odd cases, and now yesterday, that is May 1st, you have about 17,000 cases. That's a massive increase. And if you take Kolkata alone, as of the data that we have as of April 28th, the positivity rate was 52%. Now, just to give a comparison, Delhi is at 30%. And you in West Bengal, you've seen massive rallies, and then the election commission, refusing to combine the last 3 phases of the polls. Did all these have a factor? Will this play a factor in the results? Is what I want to ask, Mr. Jha.
I would expect so, Ahmed, because I think if you ask me, and I believe that if these elections were held, say 2 months later, I mean, don't forget that barring West Bengal, all the states had already voted in the first week of April when it was rising, but people were not talking about it enough. I think you would have found different results, 100%. I do believe that I was astonished to see a 50% positivity rate in Kolkata. I said, there's literally 1 in 2 people turning out positive. And you saw the comment of the Madras High Court, which said that the Election Commission should be booked for murder. I think they were right. I'm astonished how the Election Commission is running to the Supreme Court to get that expunged. It's quite preposterous, honestly. So I do feel that, in the last 3 kind of rounds of elections in West Bengal, it would definitely have impacted people because, Mr. Modi and the BJP's plank was development and jobs. And I kept saying, why doesn't the opposition tell the people of West Bengal there are no jobs since Mr. Modi became Prime Minister? They have gone down. Forget job growth, there has been job loss. And development, when we all know where India's GDP is and where the migrants are, and India is collapsing. We are tanking as far as the economy is concerned. There is no V-shaped economy. There's only a V-shaped virus that is rising. So I think, I do think that the people of India, when you look at it at the larger level, whatever is going on, I think they have changed somewhere. I don't know whether it will be felt in the state assembly elections next year. Hopefully they will. But I do believe that the magic or the brand of Narendra Modi is now damaged. Mm-hmm. How irretrievably or how seriously it is going to be impacted till 2024, that is up to the opposition to really kind of make that opinion become more ossified. But if Mr. Modi survives this, when India doesn't have oxygen to breathe, it's a governance disaster. There are no vaccines. The medical infrastructure has collapsed. I mean, hospitals are seeing people die in Delhi with no oxygen under the nose of 7 Racecourse Road or Lok Kalyan Road. I mean, I have never seen such a calamity in my life. I think post-1947, this is India at its lowest ebb. This is a governance disaster of alarming proportions. If the opposition cannot seize this moment to put this government on the docks, I don't know who will.
Yeah. Now, talking about that, we have a question from one of our viewers on Facebook, Satish. You talked about how the opposition should consolidate. This is the right time for them to come together and have a unifying force. Satish is asking, who should lead the Congress other than the Gandhis?
But there's a lot of talent within the Congress. If you look at even G23, there are a lot of very good people there. And the Congress can pull out a rabbit from the hat. It can be a dark horse candidate too. You never know. I mean, there are good people. So I think what you need in the Congress is somebody who's willing to work 24/7. Politics is not about Twitter. It's a 24/7 battle. Narendra Modi and Amit Shah have changed Indian politics forever. They are election machines. They probably did not even care for what was going on in the country in the pandemic. Their focus was on winning the elections. And they will tell themselves today, well, we have changed the headline for today and tomorrow. बाद में देखेंगे क्या होगा. So you're dealing with a very different political animal. And I think therefore the Congress needs a 24/7 leader, one who doesn't operate in a silo. I have been a big advocate of this model, and I'll tell all of you that the Congress must have one president supported by 5 vice presidents: a vice president north, a vice president west, south, east, and northeast. Don't ignore the northeast. There are 7 states there, for heaven's sake. So I think you need that structure, so it is not like a personality-driven organization again. And importantly, it needs somebody who's an extremely relaxed communicator, who doesn't stress in talking to media, whether it's mainstream English, newspapers, social media, Hindi, everything. And I think, this whole attitude of the Congress that everybody in the media is Godi media is wrong. I mean, people like you are fighting it out. There are people in various places who are impartial, dispassionate, who take up issues and question a party, whether it's the BJP or the Congress. The Congress boycotting media and, have you seen any interview within the last couple of days when Mrs. Gandhi is given a couple of interviews? Rahul doesn't talk to the media at all. And he was, at least till today, he's the de facto Congress president. I don't think these things are going to help you. So you need, more importantly, to empower, identify regional leaders. Give them power, give them space, give them latitude. They will develop. And, ultimately make the organization fluid. Congress is like a bureaucracy. We're like a Babu culture. Nothing happens until it goes through layers of approval. It's terrible. It's terrible. So I do believe that, the Congress needs a complete organizational resurrection. It needs a new leader, preferably a non-Gandhi. I do believe Rahul will have to take the backseat after these results. And it needs to put new talent in the states and new talent at the top, which is not led by one person, by a team. And, kind of have elections to the post. To the Congress Working Committee, have elections. Even if there's a consensus for the Congress president, let's assume that. You cannot have one Congress Working Committee being appointed. I mean, everybody will become a yes man. That's exactly what has happened. So I think the Congress has to go back to the drawing board. But I want to tell you this, I'm a very optimistic person. If the Congress begins to get its act together, we'll be back in the hunt early next year.
Fantastic. That's
okay. Ahmed, can we wind up? I think there is a lot of food for thought that Sanjay Jha has given us, and to our viewers. We are very glad that he was here.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jha, and thank you, Sumir, Shomo, and Arun sir. I think this discussion was really fantastic, and we'll join again at 1 p.m. and we'll see how the by-elections in Karnataka are doing. We'll be joined by our correspondent Bharat Joshi, and he'll update us on that. Thank you all for joining. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.